First off, I know there's a lot of discussion about public hearing and ordinance. Let me just restate for the record that before this application can be submitted to the state, it is not final. And this program is not final until the Department of Economic Development approves the application with accompanying resolutions and ordinances. So forthcoming will be a public hearing on the enhanced enterprise zone, and there will be an ordinance that will set forth the requirements by statute. So we have that yet to go through. And once we complete the process here with the city, we have a resolution required by the county to support this process as well. I know there's a lot of discussion. The first question is related to rescinding the establishment of the EEZ map. The most important consideration from our point would be not to rescind the establishment of the advisory board, because that group has put a great deal of effort and energy into this process. And quite honestly, it is a process that certainly from our perspective would suggest that it's working. We started out with a map that had 26 block groups in it. 6 of those block groups have been already eliminated by the advisory board. And we have 10 more blocks that are under consideration by the advisory board as possibilities yet to remove, but that decision has not been made. The advisory board agreed that the last meeting would be to take testimony from the public and have conversation as advisory board with the intent of coming back at the next meeting and making those decisions. I've also submitted per councilperson Dudley's request the information that outlines each of those block group areas, what the data is from the Department of Economic Development, which indicates the level of poverty and the level of unemployment in each of those block groups, along with the number of people in those areas. And then along with each of those block groups, I've also indicated for you the information about why each of those block groups were originally proposed, and that information has also been submitted to the advisory board. Going on to question 2, we have asked Lee Terry, the head of the local Columbia Board of Realtors, to try to find out the answer to the question about whether it's a requirement to indicate on a real estate form that an area is in an enhanced enterprise zone. Lee Terry called Springfield, Raleigh, St. Joseph, and Jefferson City, and none of those communities are the real estate agents required, nor are they placing any information on listings. Can the map be modified by council? Ultimately, it's your choice. I mean, this is your map. We're working hard to put that map together, but at the end of the day, it's your passage that approves that. The time frame, we don't have a time frame yet because we have to complete the actions of the advisory board before we can put the ordinance together. We're hopeful that the last advisory board meeting will be held sometime the first week of May, but at this point that is what we're striving to work for. Making sure that we can get the advisory board members together is what we're identifying currently. Do enhanced enterprise zones work? I'm not going to read to you all the information that we pulled off from Springfield. They are probably the oldest enhanced enterprise zone in the state. Their first zone was established in 2005. In 2010, they established 3 more enhanced enterprise zones. If you look at the map of the overlay of the zones in the city, it would appear that their entire city is in an enhanced enterprise zone, or 1 of 4. The other thing I would point out to you, there was recently a press announcement in Mexico with the company Spartan Light Metal Products that made an announcement and clearly attributed their decision in large part to incentives offered by enhanced enterprise zone. The reason I mention that is because it was an existing firm, and I want to remind all of you that in our very first discussion with you, that was one of our prime objectives, is our ability to support our existing industrial companies in the community. So what we see occurred in Mexico is exactly the kind of development that we would hope to generate here. you have any questions on the spring code, we'd be more than happy to talk to them, but you've got the information on the impact. The last question that was part of Mr. Matthew's questions was the impact of public schools. There are two ways an enhanced enterprise zone project can occur that would have impact on schools. One is if there's a real estate development that occurs. The other is if there is no real estate development, just simply a investment in personal property. If it's an investment in personal property and that personal property relates to a property tax base, then the school corporation will benefit 100% of that. If it's a project that requires an investment in new real estate, that new real estate would benefit by 50% tax abatement. The school corporation and other taxing entities would receive the balance or the other 50% for that 10 years, plus any personal property that is taxed. So in any instance where there is a development that occurs that generates any new tax dollars, the taxing entities will benefit by that. There are a couple of other questions I know are out there that have been asked by members, some members of the council. One is that relates to the section of the code 135.960, which deals with the specific and practical process for obtaining waivers from burdensome rules and regulations. What we are proposing and what's in the document that you've read simply states that the city of Columbia has two processes by which companies can apply for waivers. One is the Board of Adjustment, the other is the Building Codes Commission. What we would recommend that we pass in the ordinance is a statement that simply states the enhanced enterprise zone will not be given any authority to deal with issues of this nature. We'd like to Fred actually put that wording into the formal document, but that would be the intent that we would suggest to you that we follow. And then the last is the question of eminent domain. We would, in addition to what we're attempting to do at the state legislature, simply ask you as council members to adopt a similar statement that the intent of this program is strictly for economic development, not for any other purpose. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I want to thank Mr. Brooks.
This is not going to be a public hearing. There will be an open comment section at the end of the reports.
Just so I'm clear, Mr. Mayor, you will not be taking comments from the public.
Not at this time.
On the issue that you didn't take comments on from the public.
There will be an open comment section when we're done with our reports. It's on the agenda. This is a report to the council. There will not be public testimony at this time.
Okay. I will stand here in case there's questions from council, from your honor, or
maybe
anyone
about
else.
15 minutes, 10 minutes.
Fine.
So that's fine.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Brooks for the thorough report and his continued effort on behalf of the REDI and forwarding the EEZ. I happen to think that, I'm still looking forward to hopefully approving a narrowed EEZ at some point, but I'd like to just address the procedural issue that I raised at our last meeting. And at that point, I had asked to rescind the map. I have had an opportunity to speak with our counsel, Mr. Beckman, to see if that was possible. Now, what I'd like to do, and I agree that I do not think that the advisory board that we created in our February 6th meeting should be, it should continue. And it is not my wish at all to rescind that portion of the resolution because their work is ongoing. We are looking, I think, ultimately to them to provide a revised map. And so I would like to make sure that does not go away. I would like to make a motion, and I will put my motion on the table so that we can discuss it if that's all right. But I would like to make a motion to request staff to prepare a resolution that would rescind only the sections of R 2012, I think that's our resolution, that dealt with the map and the area that contains inadequacies that lead to blight. The resolution could also direct the clerk to send resolution to the Department of Economic Development so that they know what our current status is. And further, I direct staff to prepare an ordinance certifying a new map for a proposed EEZ prepared by the EEZ Advisory Board with the requisite public hearing as soon as possible. And that way, what I'm trying to do is bifurcate the public hearing or the map certification, just so we can get that done. I think the advisory board is fairly close to putting forth a map. I'd like to bring that forward to a public hearing and then do that as quickly as possible, and then we can deal with the application as a whole after that happens. And so what I'm trying to do is keep the momentum going, because I think we have had a lot of work put in. I think there are people that still are very supportive. I think that the REDI has done exactly what was required under statute. I don't think there was any intent on their part not to follow what they thought was proper. But it happens to be that the citizens of Columbia are an engaged citizenry. They like to be involved in these decisions. I mean, that's the wonderful thing. We're not Springfield, Mass. We're not everywhere else that is just signed off on the EEZs. We want to have a voice in the certification of the map. I think we should do it. And so I'm going to make that motion tonight. I hope I have a second, and then we can discuss it and see.
This will be put on, when can we have this come up?
So, and you're suggesting that it come back as an ordinance?
Well, I'm suggesting we have to have a resolution that sets us all, that we would have at the next meeting, I believe. And an ordinance in place so that we can start the notification period. Is that correct?
Well, there has to be a public hearing, and you have to give 30 days notice to the Department of Economic Development, and it has to be published in the paper between 20 and 30 days before the hearing. So if you wanted to have a hearing, following those guidelines, as soon as you could do it would be the second meeting in May.
Which I would think that we'd be
So
ready to put forth a map on the second meeting in May. I mean, I'm not speaking for the advisory board, but that's what I would like to do. That's my motion.
And I will second that.
That's okay, right? That doesn't interrupt, I mean, all right.
You talk about a map meeting you're going to have. You should talk about a map meeting.
The advisory board has a minimum of one more meeting, and the purpose of that meeting will be to finalize, what we hope will be to finalize the block groups that will go in that.
When does that take place?
Right now, it looks like it's going to be the first week of May. Sometime that first week of May.
So this is a motion to rescind, this is a resolution that we will vote on, when? 4 weeks?
Well, I think you're talking about a motion tonight to vote on to prepare a resolution for the next meeting, which would, a couple things, I guess. One is rescind the map and the designation of the area. And then it would also, or we could do it in 2 resolutions, setting a public hearing for May 21st.
Time-wise, if we do a resolution setting the public hearing at the May 7th meeting, we probably couldn't hold the hearing until June.
Might be otherwise, we have to just get notification, assuming it was going to pass.
Well, I mean, before the paper and everything.
I know, that's what I mean, and you have to give 30 days notice to the state also.
Is there any way we can set that time frame tonight? I mean, get that going tonight by taking some sort of action, if we have the support?
Well, you could, I guess you could do a motion directing staff to notify the department and to get an ad in the newspaper in a timely fashion to have it on the May 21st. That's kind of, you're passing a motion that's assuming that at the next meeting you're going to pass a resolution.
So your recommendation, Counselor, is, given the intent of...
I don't think I'm making one.
Well,
ask a question here. You're putting a time frame in here. Are you gonna be ready to have your final report back before then?
We will not be ready to make a final report until that the first week of May. At this point, I would anticipate we'll be in that position by the end of that week.
Are you going to be, when are you gonna be coming to us for a public hearing on making the application?
We're going to be asking the same questions you're asking tonight. So part of the question is, can we have the public hearing serve both purposes? I mean, that would be wonderful if we could do that.
Well, that's one thing that comes to mind. Are we gonna have one, can we have one public hearing to deal with the issue from Councilperson Anthony?
No.
You want two public hearings?
I have to say, what I'm trying to do is give the certification of the map, which we did by resolution, a public hearing. And if we're going back to just, having the whole report come in on the whole application, then I don't think it gives the justice or the due course to the discussion about the map certification that is being eagerly sought by the citizens of Columbia. It's lumping everything back together and we're not changing anything. And I think there should be a separate hearing. Now, I know we're only required to have one hearing on this EEZ matter. Now, I guess I could ask, once the map is certified, I think there's still people that are going to want to speak on the actual application. What is the matter with having two public hearings? I mean, it's just the way we do things.
If you want two public hearings, you could just have wouldn't be an actual public hearing, but there'd be plenty of public notice. At the next council meeting, the resolution could be taken up and the public would be allowed to speak to the council at that time. But the only thing you would do would be rescinding the prior map in the area and then notifying the department of that decision. And then the public hearing could follow whenever everything else is ready. So in effect, there'd still be one public hearing, but there'd be two opportunities for the public to address the issue.
So that they would actually be able to engage in the discussion when we rescind.
Next time.
Just to cover the dates that these follow, my sense is they'll both be ready the same night, but the 21st is about the soonest we can do a rescission item. Is that right?
And why can't we rescind tonight?
The next meeting, it could be rescinded by resolution at the next meeting.
And why can't we rescind it tonight?
Yes.
Because it was passed by resolution and you really need a resolution to do it.
And we can't do that sitting here.
Part of the public complaint was that there was no notice of what was gonna happen. And so, at the last time the resolution was on the agenda and was published on the Friday before the Monday meeting, and if tonight you would just by motion undo it, you'd be giving practically no notice to anybody. And there may be people in the community who actually supported it.
Well, I would still like to go forward with the motion.
So one motion is to have a resolution to rescind the map next meeting.
Yes.
Now, is there a
And
second clause to
the
this?
second, you can treat it in two different motions if you'd like, but the second one was to direct staff to prepare, an ordinance certifying a new map, with the requisite public hearing as soon as possible. Not attaching it to the application, the public hearing on the application.
Are you asking for 3 public hearings?
I'm asking for a resolution next week. Now,
Right.
if people.
Let's
have
do
an
that one
opportunity
first.
to-
That's simple. And then can we do that?
Is this method going to take longer than the path we're on?
No.
Will it take the same amount of time?
Well, it may take more time in council listening to the public comment, but in terms of how long it would take to actually have the ordinance and everything prepared and sent out to the state, I don't think it would make any difference.
If we have a revised map ready by the first week of May, right? Can this be dealt with?
Well, I think if if at the next meeting there's a resolution and you rescind what you did as far as the map goes, I think you'd be in a position, you could do everything in one ordinance once the board has made the recommendation.
Well, the advantage of having the three separate ones is that, one, there's three opportunities to comment on a specific thing. We won't have a meeting that lasts until 2 or 3 in the morning. You know, we're segmentizing them, and just from past history, that's a good thing. So I can see distinct advantages to having the 3 hearings and probably shorter ones.
Well, I don't think it was short, but that's democracy.
Shorter, I didn't say short. Shorter.
There's really 2 decisions, right, for EEZ. There's the map and there's Nick's codes, right?
Map and
Is there another?
The net codes and the tax abatement has to be approved.
Those go together, those 2. So there's really only 2 decisions to make. The third one is to rescind. I'm trying to figure out 3 public
Resolution.
hearings.
Well, we have the rescinding, that's gonna be next week. Then we have the setting of the,
Ordinance.
the ordinance that's gonna create the new EEZ map, and then the rest of the issues, in my mind, fall under approving the application of the EEZ, and that's the 3 in my mind.
Well, we have a motion and a second, and is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Staff, is this doable?
Who seconded it?
I did.
Any discussion from council on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Any other comments from council about the report?
I'd like to ask about tax abatement. The abatement is a 10-year period.
That is correct.
Can it be extended longer than 10 years?
It can go up to 25 years.
Can it be more than 50%?
It can be 100%.
The local regulation you're having put in deals with the Board of Adjustment. That they have to follow local regulations or
Right.
receive a waiver from the Board of Adjustment.
Actually, there's 2 agencies. One is the Board of Adjustment, the other is the Building Codes Commission. Each have the authority to waive.
But that will be a part of the new ordinance.
That would be part of the ordinance, yes.
So I think we've accomplished what you said. Okay. The next report is 69-12, which is an interdepartmental transfer funds request. Informational. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that? I'll move to general comments by public, council, and staff. I'll yield 3 minutes to anyone from the public who wants to speak about any topic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, my name is Jeremy Root. I live in the 4th Ward. Sorry, Mr. Dudley isn't here. He's my representative on this council. But it's a busy time and I have lots of obligations. I live at 2417 Beachview Drive, and I'm here to address the EEZ and Blight ordinance. And I say ordinance, so there is no ordinance. It's a resolution. This council passed unanimously a resolution that did 2 things. Declared a blighted area over 60% of this town with literally no evidence to support it. There was poverty data and there was unemployment data, but there was no evidence about the streets, the community, anything that would give you rise to an inference that there's blight in this town. And I think that's unacceptable, and I'd like for you to rescind that now. It sounds like the process might be underway to get that done. The second thing you did that day in that resolution was create an EEZ advisory board. That board is empowered to make recommendations to council about the size of the map, the proposed EEZ. That board is empowered to make recommendations to council about the type of jobs that would be available in that EEZ. And that board, just like that blight map, was created without any public opportunity city charter of the City of Columbia, which governs this community, establishes the process by which this council needs to act. And it needs to act, and it acts legislatively by ordinance. Some of you have heard me say this before, and I'll keep saying it until it happens. The EEZ Advisory Board, it suffers from the same problems, the same inherent defect as the Blight map. Now, I don't say that to impugn the good work that they've done. I don't mean to impeach them and their process. They have minutes, they have agendas. I've heard reports from firsthand from people who have been at those meetings, and they generally report that there's good work being done there. And I hate to lose it, but I don't think we need to lose it. What I think we need to do is maintain their work and their learnings. And when this council passes an ordinance as conceived by the Home Rule Charter of the City of Columbia to establish an EEZ advisory board, that body, that legally constituted body, can then benefit from the work that's already been done. But until then, there are genuine concerns about representativeness of that board, about whether there are constituencies that should be represented on that board that were not represented on that board, and whether neighborhoods have an adequate voice in that process. There are and remain residential neighborhoods in the Blight zone. DED doesn't have those people in mind. They exist for the whole state. The statute, the EEZ statute, does not have this community in mind. The body that's
How much
charged
more time you need, Mr. Root?
about 40 seconds, sir. That's
Okay, you're over, but I'll give you 40 some more seconds.
I appreciate that. It's the charter of the City of Columbia that establishes the safeguards for this community. And if we deviate from that process, you've deprived the citizens of their rights, you've deprived them of their meaningful opportunities to be heard, and it should not happen, and there are consequences for when it does happen.